Will Smith receives 10-year ban from the Oscars for assaulting Chris Rock, can still be nominated for and win awards. I think like I'm in the minority here. Like I felt like this was ridiculous, like too much.
You're not in the minority in thinking that.
I'm not? Okay. I thought this was maybe it's like one of those things where it becomes like about where you get your information. But it felt like everything that I was saying was people saying like he should have been banned for life. And I was just like, 10 years seems like a long time for something where the security didn't even do their job, and Chris Rock didn't want to press any charges. The LAPD, or I think it's the LAPD, had more than enough to press charges on their own, decided not to press charges, which goes to show you about who has all the power in that area. But am I in the wrong here to think that this was too much time for a ban?
There should have been no ban at all.
I mean, maybe give him a year. I don't know, maybe say he can't attend next year or 5 years. I don't know. Like, it's all arbitrary. It's not like there's any guidebook in the book. There's no like Oscars guidebook that says like physical assault is 5 years. You know, it's not like this is like, I'm imagining like an Oscars judge who looks remarkably like Judge Joe Brown or maybe Judge Judy and is up there with a gavel giving him his sentence. But 10 years felt a lot to me for something where they're getting more out of it than anybody, the industry is.
It's silly. It's silly. I think that what I would like to see instead is 10 years of mandatory nominations for Will Smith. No matter what junk he puts out every year, I think he should get nominated every year, and then we have actual reason to tune in because you don't know what he's going to do. I mean, maybe
he rises to the occasion every year and makes a great movie.
I love that. Now, you talk about views. I would watch that. Like, and the Oscars, since I was a kid, were like my Super Bowl every year. I was so excited for it.
So
like,
you were like you were the one person who actually.
I was the one person. Yeah, it's like I'm a boomer and a Gen Xer in a millennial body. Like I always put a lot of stock.
Are you you're a millennial? Like
I am technically a millennial.
So yeah, me and you are definitely not we're not Gen Xers, but
not at all.
I have the personality of a Gen Xer.
Yes,
I'd like to think
because we're on the early end of the millennial.
I'm 35,
cutoff.
so I'm
36 or 7, one of the two.
Okay, so you think that he should have just been forced to be nominated every year, and he actually has to make a movie every year?
Because the 10-year ban is silly. Like, I mean, either it should have been handled by law enforcement in a sane way when it happened, which would have been even cooler than actually what happened. Like if you saw the police escort Will Smith out and then he gets the award and he can't accept it. Now that's exciting. I would have loved to see that. But since that
Chris
didn't
Rock
happen,
comes up on stage and accepts the award for him.
Oh my God. You see, this is the kind of stuff that would just have me levitating.
Yeah.
I
They
love
didn't
that.
capitalize on this moment.
Not
clearly.
at all. Yeah.
They've capitalized on it in the media. It's like, like I said, Ukraine, gone. Nobody cares. Everything, Joe Rogan's stuff, gone for the time being. And all that matters is Will Smith. His publicist must love it. Like, he'll come back from this. It's like, I don't see him not coming back from this. So it says, in the article, and this is from Bounding Into Comics, it says, in a consequence that reportedly will have no effect on his eligibility to be nominated or receive any future Academy Awards, newly crowned Best Actor winner Will Smith has received a 10-year attendance ban from the ceremonies because of his now infamous slapping of comedian Chris Rock. By the way, Chris Rock basically said I'm not talking about it unless you pay me. He wants that 60 minute. He wants that 60 minutes money, which I'm all for. Like, give him and that's when he walked up to me and he was walking. I saw a slight limp.
My heart was pounding in my chest.
Dun, dun. Dun, dun. He had a slight limp on his left leg. Maybe he was sitting awkwardly. Like all this stuff, like we all saw it anyway. Like what can he actually tell us that wouldn't be there? Like I looked at the security guard Merv in the corner, and Marv didn't have anything. Like he didn't stop him at all. I want to know where the security. That's what I want.
Merv.
I want the Merv. Oh, that's but I want the docu-series about the security guard who did nothing and how his career in security guarding goes down the tubes and he has to have his own redemption arc, and Will Smith actually hires him as his personal security, and it becomes like a made-for-TV movie.
That's pretty dope. But I also want to see the character. This is something I've been thinking about a lot. Is the person that's just like sleeping with their eyes open, watching the broadcast, and their job is to just censor anything that's like out of the
5 second or like it's like I think it's like a 10-second delay.
Yeah, I wanted to see what their thought process was when they just like woke up from whatever wide-eyed slumber that they're on.
It's not nudity.
Yeah,
I don't know. Am I supposed to censor this? Like I don't know if this is supposed to happen or not.
Right.
It
says, I want to know what's going on with that guy.
So it says, noting that today the Board of Governors convened a meeting to discuss how best to respond to Will Smith's actions at the Oscars, in addition to accepting his previously issued resignation. Like, I mean, yeah, maybe they should have just banned him from being part of the of the committee. Like you don't embrace the values that we as the board of whatever
those values are.
Yeah,
Some
those
people-
nebulous
Values,
those
right.
those nebulous corporately written values that sound like a publicist wrote them up, and it probably includes the word synergy
Yeah,
in there
something like that.
at some point. So they're going on and they talk about it, and I wanted to know, like, is this? So you said the alternative punishment should be that he's just has to be nominated every year. Does he have to fund that movie himself, or does he have to?
Ideally, yeah. I mean, I think that he's in a place to where he can fund and kind of shepherd whatever projects he decides to be the star of. I mean, this is the thing, is that, like, the Oscars were originally started, they weren't televised to begin with, when they first started handing out awards, but the whole thought process behind having Academy Awards was to prove that these people out in LA that were making movies weren't just it wasn't a Sodom and Gomorrah out there.
Yeah.
The idea was that, no, we are
Which it
respectable
is a
people.
Sodom and Gomorrah out
Right.
there.
And even it was in the 20s and 30s. That's why they
Yeah.
had the Hays Code. That's why they had all these kind of restrictions and like legitimate censorship, because they thought that it was just, a free-for-all out in LA, and they wanted to show that they are respectable, good people that are able to make, respectable movies that have social values and something that America can really stand behind. And this was like this moment where that whole facade just cracked.
Yeah.
And we saw straight through that. I mean, we know what's going on out there to some extent, but we saw right through that. And I think they need to capitalize on the fact that this is just nonsense at this point. We're in a post-Empire world. We can't keep continuing to think that the Oscars are something that people care about.
Yep.
Or we can't just buy into this idea that it's all about virtue and values.
It's the natural end to like a completely performative show of virtue is the world we live in now, where everything is performative virtue. I posted something yesterday from Fee Online talking about how you do not need to post, like, if everybody's saying something, you don't need to say it as well, for fear of being, you shouldn't have to live in fear that people are going to think that because you didn't say something, you somehow believe the opposite. You have the right to not engage. But the Oscars are all about engaging on surface level virtue. I do think there's this funny, I was curious about people who've been banned from the Oscars. I love the company he's in, because it's kind of like, the movie where some dude from the suburbs end up in jail with a bunch of hardened criminals. Will Smith is essentially that person in Oscar jail. So there's this article from Entertainment. It says everybody who's been banned from the Oscars by the Academy. And there's one other person, it's Carmine Caridi, who was banned, this is my favorite, for pirating screeners intended for Academy members, only to view for the voting process, and allowing screeners to be leaked on the internet. So I like the idea of him as like a hacker, like this old guy who's like in his 80s, like paying some dude who looks like, who's wearing like a Guy Fawkes mask and looks like somebody from Anonymous, and like leaking screeners online onto Pirate Bay. But then you look at the rest of them: Harvey Weinstein,
Just all sexual
Bill
predators.
Cosby, Roman Polanski, Adam Kimmel, and the Adam Kimmel one I didn't know, but he was expelled for his history as a sex offender when it emerged that he was arrested twice for statutory assaults on minors. He was removed from the Academy membership, when they found out about this. I guess it speaks to like the speed in which information travels now. Back in the day, they're like, Roman Polanski, he's fine. What? He got into what? He did what now? Now you don't have that excuse. You can't make that excuse anymore that you didn't know. But it says in 70, you know about Roman Polanski, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It says, he fled to France in 77 after pleading guilty to unlawful sex with a minor. That's always with minors with these people, or it's always drugged.
Right.
It's why you should never, ever, wherever you fall on the spectrum of values and virtue, never let these people tell you how to live, and never let them take what they believe to be moral high ground, because they have absolutely no moral high ground to stand on. They're literally in negative moral high ground. They're in low ground. They should be about like 3 feet down with a shovel from where they sit, because they let this stuff happen, and they're part of an industry that's knowingly allowed this stuff to happen for years. It's why I get so frustrated when I read articles about this stuff, where the articles cover it and they're like the history, but they always equate it to America and not to the industry. It should not be equated to American values. It should be equated to Hollywood values, which are very, very different from your traditional American family.
Their dysfunction is like why they feel the need to just beat ordinary people over the head with their preaching.
Yep. And it never comes off well. ever. One of my biggest pet peeves is when anytime they show Middle America in Hollywood, it's always this ridiculous caricature of. I will be fair. Like when we talked about the bubble, I do believe that they caricature themselves when needed, right? Like so they're able to do that, but it's done with far less malice than or maybe that's my interpretation. But it feels to me as if their own hyperbolic interpretation of themselves is done with far less malice.
It's done with endearment, but when they make fun of ordinary people, it's contempt.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Like it's a wink and a nod when it's them. When it's Middle America, it's look at these backwoods plebs who don't understand the way the real world works out on the coast. In the academy, and their willingness to let this stuff go for years is just a sign of how far it's gotten before action needed to be taken. So I thought this was maybe the most interesting part, other than just Jada and. There's just did you see the thing about how she never wanted to marry Will Smith and she said the wedding was horrible? The more I looked into it, like she was like sick during the wedding, but to me this whole thing, she said, you sent me the video earlier that we'd seen of like her like filming him, and he's like maybe asked before it feels like he's being abused. To me it feels like he's very much under her thumb at all times, and his action was like an overreaction out of fear as to what was going to happen if he didn't do something about it. So I don't know if that's what that is. If it is, he's paying dearly for it now. I don't know if this helps his career down the line, but I don't think his career needed help. I thought his career was moving along just fine. He's had like 3 renaissances in his whole, between starting off on The Fresh Prince, becoming action star of the 90s with Bad Boys and Independence Day, etc., to later on doing what was the movie about CTE, the one where like the college or the football, the doctor who recognized the football players who had the injuries. He did that.
I missed that.
It might have literally been called Concussion.
I think so.
And so that, and then he has his other action renaissance because he's doing he did Focus, which I actually really enjoyed. And then Suicide Squad, all this stuff. So he has had multiple careers within his one career. And this is, I don't think it's right to think that this is what he'll be remembered for. I think this will end up in 5 years. We'll be like, remember when he slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars. I don't think this ends up being his legacy.
For a reason unknown to us, he's getting clearly dragged through a humiliation ritual of some kind.
Yep.
And I think the perfect way to cap that would be to have him host the Oscars next year.
Yes. Like I'm allowed to host.
And then maybe he'll be able to rewrite the narrative a little bit. Or it'll just be worse.
It could be worse. I think he's charismatic enough that he can get through this if he wants. To be honest, it's not like there's things he could, like, in today's society, saying the wrong pronouns or insulting someone from an LGBTQ community might be considered worse than physically assaulting another person in Hollywood's eyes.
Yeah.
There's far more chance that he comes back from this than he would something like that.
Perhaps. I don't know. I mean, I used to think of him as very charismatic, but I don't know what really came across in the event at the Oscars was that he's extremely unstable.
He's beaten
like,
down.
So, I mean, but who in Hollywood that has that level of a career isn't in some ways unstable? But I mean, that kind of unstable is pretty unheard of.
Yeah.
Because his marriage is unstable, and then when it's getting attacked on the public stage, he feels like he needs to defend it in some way immediately.
Their podcast
he just flew off the handle.
Their podcast where they talk about all the family stuff, that's the worst thing they could do to him. It's literally like watching someone be like abused and take advantage of in real time, and people just watch it. I can't watch, like, I watch the clips, like when you sent me the clip earlier, that's about as much as I can watch of him being degraded by his wife.
Some people were saying that it was just acted out and they're just messing around for
I mean,
more attention. I don't know.
It's not like we can prove that either way. Like,
right.
But more likely is that Jada is just a piece of work, and she's berating him all the time.
My favorite was the one where he planned the birthday party for 3 years.
Yeah.
Did you hear about that? Okay.
No.
All right. So this article says resurfaced clip shows Jada's ungrateful reaction after Will spends 3 years planning surprise party. Like, you read this stuff and you're like, no wonder he slapped Chris Rock. Like, it says a resurfaced clip from Jada Pinkett Smith's Red Table Talk series, otherwise known as the Will Smith Abuse series, shows how husband Will once spent 3 years planning a surprise birthday party only for her to not quite display the reaction he'd hoped for. The couple spoke about the time when Jada, now 50, was celebrating her 40th birthday, and Will had decided to take it upon himself to throw a lavish surprise. However, things didn't go as well as he'd hoped. In fact, her reaction was so bad, it sent Will into a low point, while Jada admitted it ended up being a turning point in their relationship. The two were speaking. Okay, so they go down. He says, basically what happened is, like, she found out, and he's like, he says, the day after her 37th birthday, I hired a team to orchestrate her 40th birthday party. Turning to daughter Willow, he continued, I hired a documentary team. I traced mommy's family roots. Her 40th birthday was going to be my thing. Jada then cut in with a look of disappointment on her face. It was going to be a splash. Will then shared the details about how he arranged it, saying Mary J. Blige performed. I debuted the film, all of that. It was going to be the thing that lifted her out of this midlife crisis. It was going to be my deepest, most beautiful proclamation of love. And she told me that the party was the most ridiculous display of my ego.
It might have been both.
Yeah, I started to say she's not necessarily wrong.
She's not wrong, but maybe time and place. Maybe you wait a while and you have that discussion in private, like a week later or 2 weeks later. Like, maybe I think that was a little bit more as much about you as it was about me.
But it's because his ego is wrapped up in her opinion of him.
He's
obviously
he needs her approval.
So yeah, it was about his ego, but it was also about displaying like his loyalty to her.
My favorite was like the first comment says, if you treat her like a star, she'll treat you like a fan.
You know what? It's true.
He's not wrong. I mean, it's it's like nobody, like, it's like the people who send celebrities or like internet or even like an e-girl and they send them comments or like, let's go out. I'm like, that's not going to happen.
Do you genuinely
think
believe
that they're going to answer you?
Yeah.
So he's kind of treating her as if she was his very own personal e-girl and not like somebody he's supposed to be like an equal to in a relationship that's given us 2 kids, or is it 3 kids?
Two,
right? It's just just Jada.
As far as I know,
and the kids seem to be on her side for some reason.
I also it was so funny. I had no idea that until that Jade. I think I told you that last time. It's like Jaden. Willow, I didn't even make that connection till later. So there's ego on both sides here. If they literally need their own names to be in their kids' names, like to be fit in there. So I just feel like we're watching someone kind of slowly self-destruct on the inside, and the Oscars gave him a 10-year ban, which to me felt completely arbitrary.
Totally arbitrary.
So what would his movies have to be about?
Just whatever junk that I'm not interested in seeing. Because we talked about this on a podcast a while back about how, when you put Denzel against Will Smith, like Denzel's more of a cinema icon and Will Smith's more of a cultural icon, because Will Smith doesn't really make very good movies. He's made a few, but not a lot. Like Denzel has like the weight of really powerful, interesting work.
Yeah.
Will Smith doesn't have that in my view, So it doesn't really matter what movies he makes. I think he's just going to continue to make whatever junk comes along the way that he finds interesting or award worthy. Do you think he'll bid for awards in the future, or do you think he's just going to how do you pivot at this point?
Because to get an Oscar, you have to submit. You have to submit your name for like your work for review. So maybe he makes a bunch of movies and he makes like one really good one and one really bad one, but he only submits the bad one. That would be cool. Like he trolls the Oscars from now on and only makes a movie about award shows.
I don't think he has the will left inside of him to try to turn this around.
Jada would have to write it.
Jada would have to write it. Could you imagine? That'd be great.
Jada makes a documentary now about her experience with Will slapping. He's like, I'm going to make this one. If you're going to make my 40th birthday about you, I'm going to make your Oscar slap about me.
Her whole thing was like, I don't need to be defended by anyone. You're just belittling me. Like, he cannot do right.
He can't win. And then if he hadn't done that, she'd be like, what? You don't love me enough to stand up for me? That's what would have happened.
Exactly.
I tell you how he wins in my book. He goes on a string of performances of like notoriously real life awful people. Like I want to see him play like Ike Turner. I want to see him be like Suge Knight. Yes, yeah. I want to see him be Michael Jackson's dad. Just a series of like horrible characters. And he submits to Oscars and he keeps winning. Yeah, that's what I want to see.
He turns it around by becoming like a famous bad guy. Like I'm not he uses it as like form of like artistic transformation. It's like I'm not the Fresh Prince anymore. I'm Will Smith, or I'm Michael Jackson's dad, or I'm Suge Knight, or I'm Ike Turner. I'm
Dope.
Bobby Brown.
Bobby Brown, man. I love it.
Perfect.
I love it. Will, we sign off on this completely. You got to make it happen.
Yes,
That's how you pivot, bro.
maybe his agent will tell him what to do. Will tell him to do that.
Not in our lifetimes.
No, probably not. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.